And so Krishna begins to teach Arjuna begins already with a profound teaching about death and eternal life. And Krishna says, this is in chapter 2, we don't start from the very beginning, but a little bit into chapter 2. There has never been a time when I or you or any of these kings and soldiers here did not exist. And there will never be a time when we cease to exist. Physical bodies appear and disappear, but not the Atma, which could be translated as the soul, the spirit, the life force, the formless. So physical bodies appear and disappear, but not the Atma that lives within them. This life force comes and dwells in a body for a while. While therein, it experiences infancy, childhood, youth, and old age, and then upon death passes eventually to a new body. Changes such as death pertain to the body, not the Atma. The wise person does not get caught up in the delusion that he or she is this body. This delusion is the very definition of ego. So the importance, he points out the importance of not identifying with the physical form, because the physical form dissolves quickly. And if you've ever looked at a dead body, even a dead body of an animal, a pet, your dog, your cat, and even more so the dead body of a human being, then it's so obvious and so clear that that is just a shell, that being never was the body. It's never more clear than in the moment when the spirit has departed, the animating presence is no longer animating that physical form, after which very quickly, of course, it dissolves. It's so clear, even beyond, you don't need to think about it, that that person never was the body. That this is just an empty shell that's left, and if you wait for long enough, you can see the empty shell dissolving very quickly. Just a few days, and it's unrecognizable. And so this doesn't require a lot of thought to realize something that's so obvious. Something that was there is no longer there, animating this form. And therefore, the true being was never that physical form. Now you might have mistaken it, but now it's totally, if you didn't know it before. And once you realize that, then you can look at all the people in your life, whether they're close to you or anybody, but particularly perhaps people who are close to you, and see that the essence of who they are is not their body, their physical body. And if you go a little deeper, then you see that the essence of who they are is not their psychological form either. The psychological entity, the me entity. I have often spoken about that, so I won't go into that now. But just here's the immediate realization then that to equate the body with who somebody is, or to equate the body with who you are, is an illusion. Arjuna, Krishna addresses Arjuna. Arjuna, he says, the contact of bodily senses with objects and attractions in the world creates feelings like sorrow or happiness and sensations like heat or cold. But these are impermanent, transitory, coming and going like passing clouds. Just endure them patiently and bravely. Learn to be unaffected by them. So he's teaching to accept whatever sensory perception arises, to accept it as it is, and talks about sensations like heat and cold and other physical sensations arise, and if you don't react to them, you step out to some extent of identification with form, because the more you react against something, the more you get trapped in form, identification with form. It says here, contact of bodily senses with objects and attractions in the world creates feelings like sorrow or happiness and sensations like heat or cold. One could differentiate that a little bit more. On the one hand, you have sensations that arise as you go through life, pain sometimes. But happiness and sorrow arise not really immediately through sensations, but through a mental interpretation of sensations. So you need to look, of course, how your mind interprets what's happening around you, how your mind interprets your sensory input, and see that the happiness, the misery, it's a mental choice. It's a judgment of the mind rather than the immediate sensory perception. The serene person, unaffected by these worldly feelings and sensations, is the same in pain and pleasure and does not allow him or herself to get disturbed or sidetracked. This is the person fit for immortality. Realize this and assert your strength, Arjuna. Do not identify your true self merely with your mortal body. So it really comes down to accepting what is, whether it's a physical thing or a situation, accepting what is rather than reacting. Now, an interesting sentence here. If you do not get disturbed by the external things that happen, then you are the person, as it says here, fit for immortality. That's an interesting thing to say, because on the one hand, they just said that the essence of every human being is immortal. And then here they say, it's when you not identify with external forms and sensory perceptions, but allow them to be, then you are fit for immortality. So one would need to add here, what Krishna is talking about is conscious immortality. To be conscious of your own immortality, which is very different from unconscious immortality. When you are not conscious of your immortality, there's great fear of death. So conscious immortality is realizing within yourself the essence of who you are beyond the form. That is conscious immortality. And you can only realize the essence of who you are beyond the form if you don't react continuously to the forms that arise around you as sensory perceptions, situations, people. They all become sensory perceptions. If you live in reactivity, I want to have that, I must get rid of, then of course you're trapped more and more in form, especially psychological form. So allowing things to be, not being dependent on externals, is part of the spiritual practice, is part of realizing yourself as formless consciousness. So this is the teaching of detachment. Without detachment, you can talk about spiritual things for 100 years and talk about God in every other sentence, and it makes no difference. There's nothing spiritual in anything you say or believe in. Without detachment, the spiritual dimension is not open, hasn't opened up.